So, another pedal build. Here we have what is described as an analog delay. This was another one of the, what do you call it, Black Friday. This was like £11 with free postage. You can barely get an enclosure for that. So that's the instructions. Means very little. What do we have? What do we have? What do we have? We have a box. Its Sunday name is an enclosure. It looks quite cool. It's kind of brushed aluminium or whatever. We have a bag of components. We have some bubble wrap. So, enclosure back in there. We have a bag of resistors. That's probably where we will start. We have some screws for the enclosure. We have a bag with capacitors, some IC chip holders, some IC chips, and I guess diodes. Do we have any diodes in this? Who knows? There we go. We have a PCB with instructions to lay down certain capacitors. We'll deal with that when we deal with it. It integrates the foot switch. It has at least 2 ports. I should probably look at that in the enclosure. Foot switch, ins and outs, knobs, 9V DC, battery clip, LED and a bezel, pots, 3 pots. So what have we got? Who knows? So we'll put all those in there for later. All the wires. I've got other delays. I just couldn't resist this. And I feel that at £11, if that's how much they can sell these for, if it is terrible, then I will just mod it until I end up with something daft. So let's have some fun. Here it is. Oh, one of them's lost its stickers. Right, so as is now common, luckily, they have written on the ohm values. So they're 12k. And there's lots of, the PCB usually says R1, C1, etc., right? But these ones are rectangles for the resistors and other strange shapes, let's say, at the moment. There's not I was going to blanketly say, the clone that I did was rounded rectangles for the plastic capacitors. I think that's just the plastic capacitors, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So the rectangles are all resistors. So you need to watch, it's quite small writing. So we've got lots of 12Ks. We've got, who knows what that says. I'll put them into bundles of known an unknown. That's quite clearly 1k. That is 24k. That is 47R. It's either 47k or 49k. I'm guessing 47k. That is, I don't know, 510R maybe? 510k I think. That is 1M, I think. Do we have a 1M? That's 100k. That is 23k. 33k even. And then the mystery one, I want to say 240k. That's what it looks like. Do we have a 240k? We do so. Right, so I'm going to put in that 240k before we lose that wee bit of paper. And then I will put them in order of my confidence in the biro writing. And I'll let you know if my opinions change.
Teachers and by parents. Remember the other week when it was revealed that the Home Office has lost 17,000 asylum seekers?
It's incredibly hot. That's how it works. Whoa! I think you should go away till I finish this. So, there we go. We have finished, finally, the resistors, including one of the strangest ones I've ever done. I can't, the solder had a habit of filling empty holes. So I had to put in a capacitor. And I have a resistor there where I can't get the leg any further in, no matter what I do. And it looks like it's connected at the moment. But I don't want to mess with it. So that obviously will be the first place I go if it requires any alteration. I could do with tidying up a good few of the solder joints. Getting strange kind of magnetism. Everything's sticking together. I don't know whether it's just static or whether it's the metals, the legs are made of a different metal. Very strange. The Klon had tiny resistors and they were okay. Everything seems a bit close together. So we've ended up with two of the resistors being a wee bit higher, which I'm guessing won't be a problem. I've got some little rubber shield that I might be able to use. But at the moment, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So like it looks as if they're connected at the moment. Who knows? Not particularly happy. But the resistors are in. So we got this far. Hello, back once again to add the capacitors to this analog delay that I got from Wish. So that's where we're up to. We've got this strange resistor that I mentioned. Let's avoid talking about it. So I've got a bundle of capacitors, right? And they are notoriously difficult to work out what is what. But these ones over here are the film capacitors. which are polarised. So we have on the board the places for the film capacitors, the little circles. Oh, that's harder than it looks, right? And we have a wee positive mark, which is where the long leg goes. So we've got 5 with 47s on them, which will go in the 47U buckets. And we've got 4 with 1U on them, which will go in the 1U ones. So that's relatively straightforward. And then I'm going to use process of elimination to narrow that down, basically, with the big scary bundle of ones that I've not confirmed whether I know what they are or not yet. Okay, so that's where we're up to. Let's go for it.
That distracts from the actual news.
Fucker.
All right, I will do.
So that's the film capacitors in. There's some of them you're meant to bend over, so I've not really done that. I'll approach that when I get to it. So now I'm going to go through each of the other capacitors and try and marry them up to these, using as much of my eyesight as I can. So these ones say 104J, and there are several places that I can put a 104. So that's going to be a good start. I've got 1, 2, 3, there's 4 places that say 104, and I've got 4 capacitors that say 104. So, more ruled out. The other good thing is, don't know why, I've soldered other things with this solder since. It keeps sparking and exploding. I don't know if it's just this PCB. But the less holes that I have for that solder to jump into, the happier I'll be. So, 4 104s, I will be back.
Again.
Go fucker.
What happened to Hannah was terrible.
So there we go, you saw that. I can't work out how the PCB is the, I suppose it could be the metal of the components. But I've definitely made 20 pedals with this solder. Soldering iron's a little bit newer, but 5 projects I've done with that. And just every now and again the solder explodes. I should really be wearing safety specs. So I don't know why that is. That's the fun of this pedal build. And sometimes it jumps into the component holes, which I had to flush out a couple of times when I was putting in the resistors. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, this is definitely weird. So, I have, let's see. What have we got? (823W73) 823X33 102J, that feels easy. 273 823WG1 823W73 823X33. So I mean, there's several 823s. I'm guessing that they different tolerances or something. 103. Right, I've got several 103s, including one that I've already put in. And I think that's 103. The printing's a wee bit off. That's a 103. Right. So we've got one, two. We've definitely got 2 spaces saying 103, and we've got one saying 102. So I'm going to going to put in the two that clearly say 103 and the one that clearly says 102, and that'll remove. Oh no, I've got right. So I've definitely got 3 that say 103 and 1 that says 102. So I'm going to put them in because I'm fairly confident with them, and that will remove some more from the bundle. There we go. The process of elimination method has paid off. Where everything, it kind of always does. I've never thought, oh my god, how am I going to tell these two apart? It just seems to be luck, but it's not the most scientific method. The 823s have all got different numbers on them. I guess they're different tolerances or something. Or they came from different factories, who knows. But it's fairly obvious that they're going to be the 3 823s. So I'm just going to put them in. There we go. Living life on the edge. So there we go. We have all the capacitors in. These areas here are where they want us to lay them down. Presumably because the potentiometers are going to sit in that. But I'm gradually just going to add more components. That one's still to be laid down. It doesn't seem particularly scientific. So I'm going to put in the PCB holders, the transistor and the diode. Diode's got a wee white line on it. It's got a white line here. You can fry the diodes with too much heat, so be careful of that. PCBs have got a wee notch, so PCB holders go in with that wee notch at the same side. And the transistor is in there. Transistor's got a concave back, and the wee picture's got a concave, so fairly straightforward. Well, we'll see if I have any more exploding solder issues. Let's do it. So there we go. The components are in. So now I'm just going to do all the other bits, the foot switch, the potentiometers, and then all the wiring. So let's have a look at what is in there. So now I've got another big bundle of components. I'll start with the foot switch because it doesn't really matter what direction it goes in. I'll go like that. And then I'll slowly just try and tick these off. So family are coming in and out, so I'm moving to voiceover mode. What I'm doing here is I've got the pots, and the pots are really frustrating because they don't really have any numbers or anything on them. One of them says 50k, but I'm looking for a 20k and a 100k out the others. So I just literally used a multimeter, put the pot to an extreme and got either 0 or 20 or 100 and did it with the other one and confirmed that they were quite easy to work out what they were. And then the other frustration with that is there's no loops or anything on the little legs. So what I did was I tinned them. I just put the soldering iron on the solder and the leg for each of the 3 legs. And then I did the same for the wire. So I didn't actually use solder when I put them together. I used the wire, which already had solder, and the leg, which already had solder, and put them together with the soldering iron. In terms of where they go in the PCB, you just have to kind of work it out based on the diagram. It shows the back view of it and shows which leg is which, and then each of the bits on the PCB are numbered. If I remember rightly, it's volume, repeats and delay. So you've got R1, 2 and 3, D1 and 2 and V1, 2 and 3, or something like that.
What are you doing?
I'm building something, but it's I need to use burny things to build it. The ins and outs were relatively straightforward. You just have to look at the diagram and the instructions, and then wire them into the bits on the PCB. There is an in, an earth. I guess any earth would work. I just chose one. There's several earths. So you've got an in, an earth, and then what is it? PWB and PWC or something like that. Wait, I'll just check. Yeah, PWB and PWC. Now the PWB and PWC bits are also for the 9-volt power supply. So you want 2 wires in each of those holes. That's how I did it. Maybe I did it wrong, but it works. So who knows?
I don't know what.
No, that's good. That's all good. Right, so we've got a big leg and a little leg there. Getting the components in the enclosure is an absolute mission. What I did was I wired in the LED first. So I put the LED in the bezel and then secured it to the enclosure. And then I shortened the legs on the LED and then wired the 2 wires from the PCB to the LED with that method of tinning them both first, which is really not particularly satisfactory. And then slowly eased everything else in. I then put the ins and the outs, which are very, very close together. I screwed them in, and then put the pots in. Put everything in quite loose so that I could then tighten it up later. And then I put the 9-volt supply socket in, and then once it was in, I soldered the wires round to it. And lastly, I slotted the foot switch in. But it was kind of trial and error, and I'm not wonderfully happy with it. So that's everything apart from the power wired in, and now I'm trying to fit it in this tiny little enclosure. Fatherly duties got in the way, and I think the biggest weakness is the size of the enclosure. It's just a little bit frustrating trying to fit everything in, and then there's these little cheap pots that don't have anything to solder onto, so you need to tin the ends and then tin the wire and then kind of push them together and hope that they work. So it's not particularly satisfying. I don't have a lot of confidence that this is going to be without issues, but it is what it is. So I'm going to plough on through, and then hopefully, the problem is that to solve any issues I'm going to really have to dismantle it, so I'm going to have to do this again if there's problems, which is not a great feeling while you're putting it together. There we go, finally that's warmed up. It doesn't help that I have absolutely massive fingers. Right, I think I'm going to do my best to test it in that position. There we go. Right, so we have it lights up. Lights up when you put an input signal into it, and you may have heard what I heard there. So let's put the potentiometers to the middle, roughly. Nothing's tightened yet, and let's put it off. Fun times. can't believe this. I think it may have worked first time. So that'll be the number of repeats, or the, what you got there, calling it repeats. That's like a kind of blend, that's quite cool. That's obviously the time. That's cool. You get a very, very short delay time. Not quite slap back. Fun, fun. I'm somewhat flabbergasted. That was an absolute ball ache of a pedal to put together. A lot of guesswork in where everything went, and it works. It was horrible putting it in the enclosure. Now I'm going to screw it all in and it'll stop working, but at least we know that the guts are there. That's my levels, rather than the... I really like that. I'm going to tighten it up, tighten up all the screws, and then I'll do a full review, separate video, and this will probably come out afterwards. Wonderful, cheers. So I thought I was finished with the build, but when I was putting it all together, I discovered that absolutely mentally the foot switch plus the PCB, right, is longer than the distance of the enclosure. So you can't fully close the enclosure. I have done my best, but basically you crush it together so much that even with insulating tape on the back of the enclosure, it was shorting across the foot switch. So the solution to that would probably be to shorten the pins on the foot switch, which feels like an extreme ball ache. Or get a bigger enclosure. The pots, one of the pot is wonky. There's nothing else forcing that to be wonky. So that's quite weird. I quite like the sound of the pedal. If I was to start again, I would use a different enclosure, and I would buy better pots, and potentially better inputs. I didn't have any problem with input and output jacks, but they felt a bit cheap. The knobs that they give you, whether it's because the potentiometer's bent or not, but they don't actually all fit where they're meant to go. So it is you get what you pay for, really. So that probably needs a new enclosure when I have a spare enclosure, but I'll obviously have to unsolder a few things and put them back together. But it does sound quite nice. So there we go. That's what you get for £11. I need to check. I shall check just now. Yes, £11.88. So my £11.88 analog delay pedal that I quite like, but it doesn't have a wonderful enclosure. It needs a larger enclosure.